Hey, so today I'm going to be talking about a another theory of the levels of being. Kind of the in this case it's going to be a levels of consciousness type of framework based on the Law of One. It's a book which um, talks about the Egyptian god Ra, and I guess every time I talk about the book, I'm not gonna get into the my thoughts on how reliable the information is, but for the purposes of videos, I'll just pretend this is a normal source of information and not a something extremely counter to the normal epistemology or whatever systems of reality. So anyway, the sort of the levels that the Law of One talks about is a model of consciousness that essentially places humanity at the kind of like the lower middle part of it. So it describes an octave like in music. So it's 8 levels going from the first density to the 8th density, and humanity is at the 3rd density at our current point, or gradually moving to the 4th density as the as it describes, and it's something that is hard to understand, hard to explain, because obviously, if humanity is at the third of 8, there's no way for us to really understand the higher levels. Even like the fourth density, the 4th level is not. I don't know. It just doesn't completely resonate with our like worldly language. So I'll yeah, I'll just go through the list. I'm just doing this from memory, so it might be a little inaccurate. But starting with the first density is oh yeah, I should explain that this a lot of this is kind of conjecture and like trying to figure out what they're talking about in the book, because they only mention these things pretty briefly. So I'm referencing one of the interviews where Ra gives a response of let's see. So the first density is the cycle of awareness, where it just gives the titles, but I'm interpreting awareness as in kind of just like the basic ability for like an organism to interact with its environment. Think of like a bacteria or something. The bacteria can sense like the chemical levels around it, and some more advanced ones can sense light. Like whether it's day or night. And so sorts of very basic awareness is what kind of arises in the first density. So it's basically the first life that exists on a planet. Then the second density would be the the cycle of growth. It says, which I kind of interpret as which it says in other places that the second density is like animal life and plant life, things like that, and as well as mineral life, which gets into a whole other topic. But but yeah, the growth I'm interpreting as essentially kind of using the basic senses, the things that are like I don't know, kind of grounded in basic physical processes, like sight and sound, but is missing the higher cognitive awareness that humans have. So it's basically just like a basically it's life forms of life that take on kind of an automatic process to them. That obviously animals can make decisions and plants make decisions too, but the decisions they're making aren't well, I don't know. Yeah, it's making assumptions, of course, but you kind of assume that the decisions they're making are much more basic and closer to the sensory experience. Like they're not really like a plant doesn't sit down and have like a deliberation, like a ongoing decision making process. It's sort of just it senses, different distribution of nitrogen in this soil part, so it decides that it's going to send roots to that part, but it doesn't like reference a history or reference like a theory of what it means for nitrogen to be in the soil, something like that. It's like it has aspects of that. Like the tree will kind of be conditioned by its previous experiences, but it's not going to be. It doesn't have that sort of like I don't know. It's missing a certain higher level process that is inherent to the next kind of like the next level of being. So yeah, third density would be what comes next. It corresponds to says the cycle of self-awareness, which kind of what I was trying to get at is that it's the point where you gain, or like a being gains like an ego, in a sense of like, this is who I am, and this is like, I don't know, kind of the sense of separateness from the environment, rather than being rather than still being something that's kind of an automatic thing that happens within the environment. Because on some level, human beings are still like something that happens as like a chemical process, as a physical thing. But we have a very clear sense that we are an ego. We are like a me doing this thing. And obviously everyone talks about how that's an illusion, but there really is a real substance to it, that like it becomes a very important part of how we act in the world, that we act as though we are separate. And yeah, I think that's, Rao talks a lot about the third density, and how like in third density there's that sense of ego, and there's also the sense of confusion, which ties into the fact that the ego is an illusion. But it goes further in that, in the sense that sort of like the purpose of the third density is to be confused, and to like do what I'm doing right now, and trying to like piece together an understanding of the world, and try to convey that to other people who are also in this state of confusion. So it's really like if the second density is the density of growth, the third density is the density of like mental, just piecing together, and like mental, I would say mental growth essentially, but mental like I guess reorganization, and bringing like the light back to the world that has been lost through that decision that we are separate, something to that effect. And yeah, well, this video is already a bit longer than I expected, but the fourth through the eighth density are much faster to explain, because you can't, or I can't really explain them because I'm a third density being. But yeah, the fourth density is described as the cycle of was it love and understanding, which those types of words are used a lot, and they become kind of hard to tell what they mean. But my image of the fourth density is that it's something that's still it's like we should clarify that the beings in the lower densities are like physical beings that we see in the world, but we are like the highest physical being that we are aware of. But fourth density is something that I think it can take a physical form, but as far as we're concerned, it's kind of like an energy being that we could maybe find in the mental realm, but couldn't find in the physical world. I guess with the exception of I don't know, some alien UFO type of thing, but I'm not going to talk about that sort of stuff. So the fourth density is essentially it's kind of like the angelic form of a human, or humanity, something like that, where we would recognize the thought process of it as being human, but we would be confused by how kind of boundaryless the fourth density being would be, because the fourth density doesn't it doesn't have that separate ego, and it also doesn't have kind of like the lack of trust that humans have. Like, we don't really trust our environment, and it makes sense because there's so much that can harm us. But the fourth density is kind of beyond being harmed by others, and it's sort of just, I don't know, kind of like a purely loving state of being, at least by my understanding. And then yeah, the fifth density above that is the density of understanding. It's the density of light and wisdom, which is a little meaningless to me, but I get the sense that the addition of wisdom kind of comes into the sense that the fourth density is kind of like a separation from the third density, and kind of like a return to a more basic level of being on some level, where there's no longer the need to figure things out, and it's more just love and acceptance. Whereas the fifth density kind of brings back the separateness, but the separateness isn't of ego, it's more of like being able to separate things into categories. And that's kind of like where I would understand that the wisdom comes in. Kind of like the light and wisdom is like the ability to see things and the ability to understand them as parts of a whole. I don't know, something to that effect. And yeah, the sixth density would then be, calls it the cycle of light. Yeah, it's light, love, and love, light. Which I'll talk about this later, but they're kind of like combined words that they use. So it's like it's written in the book as love/light, and then light/love, which really just doesn't mean much to me. It kind of hints at the idea that there is some kind of a transcendental facet of existence which can be described as love or as light, but is actually something that is both of these things, but also its own thing. I don't know. That's about all I say about sixth density, I guess. I think the Raw spirit says it's in sixth density, which indicates that it's maybe either like the highest density that a being can be and still communicate with us, or alternatively it's just like a useful density to be in for beings that wish to I don't know, communicate knowledge to the third density, something like that. It's very hard to say, but yeah, then seventh density is the gateway density, which I think is interesting because right now I'm just explaining things that are above human knowledge, but assuming Ra is at the sixth density, the seventh and eighth would also be above its knowledge. So yeah, I don't know very much about seventh density, but I infer that it's kind of like a there's not much that happens there. I think they mentioned that it's total unification, and yeah, I guess gateway also implies that it's kind of like a passageway. Like I don't know, you could say like maybe like the in order to get to the eighth density, you must pass through the unification of the seventh density and still maintain some sort of momentum or some like sense of progress. Because when you talk about like the lower densities, second density and third, have like a lot of momentum and like movement upwards, but when you get to like these higher densities, there's no real motivation to act and no motivation to go any higher because you're already at like a level of unity and perfection. Yeah, and yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for the seventh density. The eighth, I don't think there's anything said about it really, that other than that it's something beyond understanding. It's like a mystery. What Ra says is like a mystery that it has yet to plumb, which is I don't know, funny word. But yeah, there's not too much to be said about it. You could yeah, I don't know. I'll talk later about there is a connection to be made with the Buddhist notion of nirvana. That nirvana is kind of like an unspeakable thing, in the same way that the eighth density is unspeakable. But yeah, that's a rabbit hole for another time. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it. So fun to talk about this. I'm in the process of understanding the kind of how to enjoy making these videos, because there's something funny about the making the shamanism video. I didn't really enjoy that much, even though I was essentially talking about the same type of like classification of something. So I don't know, just a process of exploring. I guess that's what the third density is all about. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll yeah, continue the process of understanding and expressing understanding. Yeah, peace.